Your kids could get free or low-cost health coverage from Medicaid or CHIP. Even if you've applied before, they may be eligible now. Kids up to age 19 are covered for checkups, vaccines, dentist visits, hospital care, and more. And if they already have Medicaid or CHIP, remember to renew every year. Visit insurekidsnow.gov or call 877-KIDS-NOW. Paid for by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services.
Yeah, because you already hit a great point. Most of us, especially females, but all kids are taught to be seen and not heard. That
Mhm.
was, and it goes deeper than just the seen and not heard. You have to be seen as pretty.
Mhm.
So you have to be seen in a very specific type of way. And gosh, I was the most awkward child. Okay. And, some people are born just knowing how to socialize and interact and present themselves and dress. My daughter came out of the womb with like a fashionista. She knows exactly, she's 7 now and knows exactly and has always known how to pair this top with those pants and do her hair. And this is not anything that came natural to me. I had to work incredibly hard and didn't even figure it out at all until my 30s. So,
Uh,
my 30s is when I finally stopped being awkward, which I sometimes still think about how painful it was and is to look back on and know that I was expected to fulfill all of these social boxes
mhm.
and I was constantly berated for not, but nobody ever took the time to explain to me how.
Yeah, I can relate to that a lot. Though I have to say, my mom was very feminine and kind of prissy. So she set the role model for that. She put time into her hair and her jewelry and accessories. I don't think anyone really told me, but there still was that expectation. And one really nice trait of my mom, I was her only daughter, and she, for the most part, was the only daughter in her family. So she spoiled me a little bit in terms of clothes and things like that. She sewed all my clothes and she enjoyed dressing me up. Now, so the good side of that is that I look pretty, but the bad side was that my self-worth was judged. I mean, well, the self-worth I developed, all came from looks and appearance and comparison. How did I compare to other people? Which inherently both of us were insecure individuals. And so no matter how hard we tried, we still felt like we weren't quite getting there. And as I said right before we started talking, even though I've done tons of therapy work and I work with others, still struggle with that because that's one of those core messages that I got as a kid that just haunts me. Haunting is a good way to put it. So,
It's a really good word to use because that's exactly right. And I think most people are dealing with similar insecurities. And that
mhm,
was something that helped me start to get over them is that I realized that everybody, most everybody is too caught up in their own head about their own insecurities and hoping no one
mhm,
notices them,
mhm.
that they don't have the capacity to notice you or yours. And if they are noticing you or yours, that's most likely them picking you apart in order to make themselves feel better about their own perceived shortcomings.
Absolutely. And so I try to tell people, like, especially bullies and people who attack you, it's more a reflection of them
Hmm.
rather than you. And when you detach from that, it really helps not take things as personally or begin not to. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Affirmations were something that also helped me. So notice, I'm a yoga meditation teacher,
Mhm.
and mostly I do restorative yoga, so we don't focus too terribly much on strength building or fancy moves. We're mostly, it's really good for people with anxiety, stress, trauma, those
Mhm.
types of things that they're trying to cope with because we go into these really long poses, like these long stretches, and our goal is not to push the stretch and increase flexibility, but to relax into it as deeply as we can. And as we relax into it, the flexibility comes like as a result of naturally later. But
Mhm.
to give people something to do because they're bored and they can't stand to sit in the silence and the quiet with themselves, I'm constantly giving meditative prompts. And
Uh-huh.
so noticing your inner dialogue is one that we really touch on often, and reworking the words that you're noticing your brain put up because you we get mixed up and we think our brain and the thoughts is us, but
Mhm.
we are the conscious observer of the thoughts and the brain and the movement and the world and all the things. And the brain and the thoughts, since we use words to communicate with other people, and that's how we interact with and learn and build relationships for the most part betwixt ourselves, we think that that is also us, but the brain and the thoughts goal, its job is to keep us safe.
Right.
That is its only job, and that's why it pays more attention to the dangerous, the bad,
Mhm.
the scary, the harmful, all of those. That's why true crime is so addicting, and the
Mhm.
news is all bad news because it's more addicting, which means more numbers. The brain doesn't care about the sunshine and the rainbows because those aren't trying to actively kill us. So,
Right.
so noticing all of that and knowing that it's your brain, not you, you can start to flip those over into something more helpful. And that's what I
Mhm.
tell my students is that you want to notice the thoughts and not necessarily are they good or bad, because good or bad is a judgment and
Mhm.
it's, relative to the person, but are they helpful or unhelpful? And it
Mhm.
doesn't even matter if it's true or false. It's just, is it helpful or unhelpful? So, an example I like to tell people is if say you're at a restaurant and the waiter smiled at you and was like extra nice, your head goes, are they flirting with me?
Mhm.
The automatic reaction should be like, absolutely, of course they are. You don't have to act on it. You don't have to,
Right.
it's just, is it helpful to believe the story that they are? Yes, that works. That helps you work through your insecurities. And uh, if you apply that to all of the different interactions you have with people and things and stuff, and then you start, I could ramble on forever about mindset and flipping all of this from one way to another.
No, I totally agree with you. And I'm fascinated by the brain science of addiction and mental health. And that just feeds right into it on how,
Hmm.
again, like you said, the primitive brain is there to protect us, to make us strive to survive. And that, dates back to, it's the primitive brain. It's where we
Hmm.
started with. And it's the other parts of our brain, the amygdala, things like that, that interpret, and then our frontal lobe, who helps us decide how to act on it. And it takes behavior and training to understand. And I love that term. Is it helpful? I haven't thought about it that way before, because I've really strived to like not fight them, just accept them, kind of like ACT therapy.
Hmm.
But yeah, I find it the great part, I guess what I'm getting to is that we can retrain our brain. We can retrain our thinking. And once we're aware of those drives, then make a healthy choice on where to go with them.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, insecurities are such a big part. of our lives
Hmm.
because we're social creatures, we're interconnected. None of us are as independent, even under the best of circumstances that we think we are. We are
Hmm.
all codependent. We need each other to thrive,
Right.
Um, having that community and that support system is just as important as having food or water and shelter. So our insecurities kind of help corral us back to what is acceptable.
Hmm.
And, I used to, when we lived in the little villages and in primitive times and thousands of years ago, if the village didn't like us and we were ostracized, it meant pretty much certain death because
Hmm.
that guy was the hunter and he's the one who brought the meat. And then she's the one that knew which berries were poisonous and which ones weren't. And then the doctor over here knew which berries to use to heal the sickness. And, so we all collaboratively worked together. And over the past 100 or so years, we've become more, industrialized and gotten away from nature, gotten away from the village aspect and each other and community. And it's allowed us to live more independent lives. And it's gotten more and more so to where we've sectioned one another off. And so most of us, you know, the internet has brought us the ability to find our village, but also you can't really substitute a digital world and community and support for actual in-person community and support. And a lot of us have forgotten how to interact with the people in our lives in a way that is helpful and supportive. With the age of information, we all know what red flags are now. And
Right.
unfortunately, there's not very many people walking the planet who don't have a red flag somewhere or another. So, whereas used to, we may try to compromise and work through something with people because we needed to,
Mhm.
the way the world is for most of us these days is that, well, I don't need them in my life. I don't have to put up with their nonsense. And to an extent, yes, I absolutely agree. You have to create boundaries around toxic individuals. But also, we've become really rigid in what we're allowing,
Mhm.
which has left us lonely because again, we're all human, and that means imperfect and a little chaotic and rough around the edges, every single one of us. And it doesn't really matter how polished we look on the outside, because once you get past that outer layer, yeah, but we're stuck on the outside, most of us. And that's why we have such heavy insecurities, is because people aren't willing to, or many people aren't willing to, or don't have the emotional capacity to get past the outer layer and into the deeper levels of each and every one of us. So, if your outer layer isn't polished in a certain way, they'll never, it gets.
I know. And you talked about so many things that we could expand upon. The two that pop out with me is how important time in nature is,
Yes.
and I equivalent, I'm making up words. I relate that to learning to be still, which is what you practice with yoga and meditation and your affirmations. And the other thing that popped up, well, there's lots of things, but authenticity is so important. If we would just truly be more authentic and vulnerable, like Brene Brown talks about, I think we could build that connection easier with other people.
Mm-hmm.
Tie that all into this social media and how kids are learning to build their worlds around their phones. I mean, it's interesting on how all these are influencing like our mental health, our mental peace.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, thankfully, I just, well, I got on Facebook years ago to connect with like high school friends and family. And I found that to be a good resource.
Hmm.
Never got wrapped up in any negativity. And then when I wrote my book and started to promote myself, I got on Instagram is my main source of social media. And here's the nice thing about Instagram for me is that my Instagram community is all about recovery and mental health, and
Hmm.
90% of it is positive. So I'm putting positive things into my brain on a daily basis, which is great for me and great for you because you live and work in a very positive, mental health friendly career.
Hmm.
Um, but we have to look out for those people who don't, especially our adolescents who are at that stage of letting their brains expand. Now, you have a 7-year-old. Do you have any teenagers yet?
Not quite. I have a 10-year-old.
Uh-huh.
I have a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old. So we're working our way there, but we're not quite there yet.
Do they meditate with you or do affirmations?
I I work in mindset work with them. They don't realize that that's what we're doing.
Exactly.
Yeah. So they don't really sit still. My daughter says that my yoga classes are boring.
Yeah, because she's probably programmed by TV and social
Oh
media,
yeah. Oh
you
yeah.
know, go, 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 go. So,
Most of us are.
yeah, no, that's true. It's true. I have to work at taking time off sometimes. Every year I take a 2 or 3 week hike out along the Appalachian Trail, and that knowing that that's coming up, I'll often tell myself like, okay, you need to go hiking. Let's go somewhere this weekend, get back to nature, reground yourself, remind yourself. Or it might be, okay, I'm going to put this on hold. I'm going to table this for right now because I know in June I'm going to have my break and I'm going to sit in silence and kind of absorb. Do you think that's true? Do you think you can stock up on good vibes or good energy?
It depends.
So, because I like the behavioral thing. I mean, I start every day with affirmations, um, or meditation of some sort. It's part of my recovery program. But so it's become part of who I am.
Hmm. I would say that rather than stocking up on, it's more
Uh,
of a you can create more at any moment. You just have to decide. And sure, that sounds great, Savannah, but some people have a really hard, especially people who come from really traumatic backgrounds,
mhm.
have a really hard time. I can be like, okay, let's find three things we're thankful for right now. And they're like, nothing. I'm thankful for nothing, Savannah.
uh,
So I always have to like break it down all the way for them. Like if you're having a hard time finding something, take a deep breath. Man, am I happy that I can breathe right now.
mhm,
We've all experienced congestion, nasal congestion, or
mhm,
in our chest where it makes it hard to breathe. And when we're experiencing those things, it's easy to be like, man, I wish I could breathe. But then when you can breathe really well, we don't think about being thankful for it. Did your legs bring you in here today? Man, I'm thankful for my legs. I'm thankful I woke up this morning. I'm thankful that the sun is shining. Oh, that's a nice wall color. Make it dumb if you want to. It's fine. You just find something to attach your mental chatter to that's right now in the physical. Because
mhm,
but most of us live in the past or the past or the future. We don't really spend much time in the present, which is where we create what we want. But I completely agree with taking time to relax. And I started all of this because I was so stressed out that I was pretty sure it was fixing to start causing me seizures. Um, my mother has straight seizures, and always has due to stress. My grandfather, which was her father, also, and I felt that same level of like it felt like electrocution, like
Hmm.
the energy and the electricity that was running through my body with the intense emotions that were trying to, their emotions can be bigger than we are, and they radiate outside of us, and we don't know how to contain them, and they become a whole lot to deal with. So that's how I got started in every bit of this, yoga, meditation, all of that. And so I understand the hustle and how society and culture has taught us to go, 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 do more, be more, have more, produce more. Your worth is in your productivity. And
Hmm.
so, most of us are just running ourselves into the ground trying to
Hmm.
meet these expectations that are unrealistic for us. And we've tied our happiness and our peace to an end goal of the productivity. So, when I make X amount of money, when I get X amount of followers, if I once I meet this goal, once I meet that goal, I will be happy. I'll let myself rest once I get there, once I sell
Hmm.
uh 10,000 copies, whatever it is, everybody has their own goal. Once I lose X amount of pounds, losing weight. The goals are endless.
Hmm.
What we think we want that's going to make us happy or help us find peace. But no matter what those are means goals. We think we're going to get what we want, which what we actually want is the happiness, the peace, the space to breathe, to be free, to go on a hike when we want to and spend time in nature. And we've tied all of these other things to getting that. And what's hilarious is that once you get deep into this enough, you realize that you could just skip straight to the emotions because that's what we're after anyway. We just don't really realize that we're after that. Um, and that sounds, it's an oversimplified, uh, whatever this is, but because it also, okay, that's fine. I can find happiness and peace in the moment, sure, whatever, if you say so. We could, there's tons of different tools on getting there, and there's steps that you can take to get there, uh, which is super, it's not difficult, but in the beginning, again, training the brain makes it seem
Hmm.
kind of difficult and whatnot. But I know a lot of us deal with most of our issues being the people around us. So then you run into because again, coming back to relationships, uh,
Hmm.
there's nothing more fulfilling and purposeful in our lives, but there's also nothing that's going to hurt us more than the relationships and the people in our lives. So, okay, that's all fine and dandy. I could do X, Y, and Z and probably do all right and get like I'm so happy and at peace when I'm by myself. It's wonderful when I'm by myself and then everybody else shows up and it all just tanks because you can't control them and you can't convince them to act right and do right and what even is right. But, you know, they're annoying me. They need to stop. They're always angry and in a bad mood. And, you know, again, you talk about relationships a
I
lot.
do. But, and you hit the key point there prior to the bringing up relationships is that you have to be at peace within yourself before you can give anything to a relationship or receive
Hmm.
anything from a relationship because you're going to interpret another person's words, emotions, body language based on your past experiences for the most part, unless you stay in the present, unless you seek clarification and validation. And
Hmm.
um, it sadly, it takes a lot of work to do that,
Hmm.
which is why coming back to those simple things, finding happiness in simple things, breaking it down as small as possible is a great place to start.
Hmm.
So yeah, find peace and happiness with yourself. Be comfortable with yourself. Be comfortable what you can give to a relationship. define what you want from a relationship.
Hmm.
Because just like with those other things, end goals, a lot of people get tripped up on, well, I want to have 3.5 kids. I want my partner to be tall, blue-eyed, the specific details, which really don't say anything about the good qualities of a relationship.
Not even a little bit.
Yeah. Um, yeah. And in my experience, I carried my experiences from my childhood, my expectations into my future relationships. Now, along the way, I recognized, even as an adolescent, like, I want things to be better than this. My
Hmm.
parents were very authoritarian. They laid down the laws and we obeyed.
Hmm.
And early on, I was like, no, I want to have different relationships with my kids. And I, so of course, I was driven towards, mental health. I grew up in an alcoholic home, by the way. And my dad didn't get sober till much later in life. And that, you know, haunted my personal and emotional development and carried into my relationship. But I actively started working on that young, went into social work, went into addiction treatment, and from the get-go was like, I'm going to do things differently. And I tried, I have to say. Um, I think I did a pretty good job with my kids until I started drinking later in life. And then, I'd have to ask them. My, I have good conversations with my kids now. We talk pretty openly and honestly. I'm jumping around. The oldest two children who grew up for the first 10, 12 years of their life without a mom who drank, well, reflect back on that time as like the good days. And then the next 10 years when I drank were like the bad days. And that's when their two younger brothers were growing up from like ages 3 to 15. Um, and so they had a different childhood. I guess the point that I'm getting at now is I had great intentions, tried to learn from the experiences I had as a kid to
Hmm.
change things, and I did make some changes. Thank God for that. Then I slipped into alcoholism, into substance use disorder, and derailed a lot of that and had to start all over again when I got sober. And it's been a journey, and I've learned a lot about rebuilding relationships and the importance of everything you talked about so far: community, self-awareness, quiet time, um, being honest. And sorry, I'm getting distracted. One of my kids is calling me right now. How odd is that? He must be hearing me think about him, or the universe is transmitting to him. Um, but anyhow, I had to start over with my kids, and I had to, in order to do that well, I had to go back and reprogram all of those core thoughts. Like, I had changed some of my thinking. I had decided at some point, I'm not going to spank my children. I'm not going to call them names. I'm not going to let people call them, because my son's named after his dad. So I didn't want anyone to call him little, little Dennis or baby Dennis. So, I mean, I laid groundwork, but I think in order to really repair the relationships and to really aggressively break those generational patterns of dysfunction, I had to go back and do my own like inner child healing and inner child work. So, which has been a journey, and it's been a good journey. Have you done a lot of inner child work yourself? I'm thinking that you probably have.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Um, one of my driving forces was also my upbringing. All of us,
Mhm.
excuse me, all of us are more or less products of our generational gifts.
Hmm.
pass downs, you know. Um,
Oh, I like that you call them gifts. And
they're
it doesn't have to be all bad, does it?
No, no. And, looking for good in them is something that helps a lot too, because, we didn't only get the bad things from our family. We
Mhm.
got some cool things as well. And sometimes it takes a little digging, a little sifting, and you have to realize that most likely your parents were also just traumatized children
Hmm.
who didn't have good guidance or positive guidance. And so they were doing the best with what they had available. And the people forget how new the internet is and what the world looked like before that. So before the internet, we're so spoiled these days. We can just type in our problems to Google search and get all sorts of directions and information about that and how to start. We can just get to work and start
Hmm.
working through it all. No big deal. But before the internet, you were subjected to the beliefs and information that were available in your physical environment.
Hmm.
And most people lived in very small little echo chambers where the only beliefs they had were the beliefs of those around them, which were probably mostly wrong. And if you wanted to fix something or know something, for example, how do I get my dad to quit drinking?
Hmm.
You have to scour the world essentially, which, maybe just your town and not the actual
Right,
world,
right.
but to a single individual before the internet, your town and maybe a couple of surrounding towns may have well been the whole world. That's what you had access to.
Hmm.
So you had to scour that. I don't know, maybe go to a library, hope that they have a book on it, hope that
Hmm.
the book is accurate, because
Good point.
that's a big uh wake up call for a lot of people. We just automatically assume that if it's in a book, it's accurate, but that's
Hmm.
not at all the case. Books have typos. Books are products of people, and people are flawed and imperfect.
Right.
Therefore, so are books,
And information updates and changes, and we
hmm
gather awareness. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we're always finding new information that disproves long held information, So,
Hmm.
what even is truth and reality? Whatever you make it to be, whatever you decide it is.
Yeah.
Is it helpful or is it unhelpful?
Sure. I want to jump on something that you said there because a lot of people ask me, especially those in recovery who have parents who never got into recovery, how to
Mm.
make peace with your parents. And what you just described as the key feature there is that because I know my parents had good intent and they actually provided my brothers and myself with a pretty good childhood. We were middle class, lived in a nice house, participated in activities, had clothes, yada, yada, yada. They went through their struggles, but for the most part, kept trudging through.
Yeah.
So they had good intent. They carried down and passed down some of their values. Some were good, like family loyalty, religion, service work, volunteerism, but some of them were bad, like men are more important than women.
Oh, yeah, we had that
Men
one too.
have men have more value than women.
Hmm
Um, Family loyalty is paramount over everything. Don't talk about what's going on inside the house.
Yep.
So, in terms of coming to make peace with your parents, you've got to take first, again, you got to do the work within yourself and then take a fair look at their environment where they came from. Both of my parents are children of immigrants. They both grew up on working farms where the work ethic was definitely divided between men and women.
hmm
My father only had one sister. My mother was the only daughter for first 10 years of her life. So she was thrown into female roles. I mean, I understand where that misogyny comes from. It wasn't actual intent, it was just laying down the law. And and of course, some of that's just passed down through like epigenetics and our genes, our
Mhm.
thinking, our thoughts, our reactions. Accepting some things is normal. Um, but here's the interesting part of the story is that my mother, her parents evolved a little bit over time. Um, they never, they weren't big proponents of a secondary education because they were, farm workers. That was like, go out and create your own farm. Um, so they didn't really value a higher education.
Mhm.
But my father's family did. And so when my mom and dad married, my mom helped put my dad through college. All of his siblings, including his only sister, went through college. And so she valued having a higher education, about making more equal opportunities for women. She valued it. I heard about it during like when I was a young kid in the 60s and 70s about pro birth control, pro choice, and things like that. She has some very feminist point of views, which was great on one hand because she tried to break the cycle. But on the other hand, there is still that message of, well, you got to go to college and hopefully you'll meet a rich man, go to college to find a nice man, preferably rich to marry and to make sure. But you'll have that college degree in case he ever divorces you or leaves you. So she had good intent. She really instilled in me the value of education and equal opportunity between men and women. But she also instilled in me without consciously thinking about it. And I found myself doing this to my only daughter, you know, repeating some of the things that she said
Mhm.
that she taught me without intent. Here's one that I probably didn't even realize till I got sober 12 years ago that how manipulative it is. Oh, manipulation. That was a key. That manipulation was a key way for women to get what they want.
Mhm.
So she told me really early on, I passed this on to my daughter. If if your spouse, partner, boyfriend doesn't think one of your ideas is a good idea, make him think it's his idea.
Mhm.
I mean, there's merit to saying, let's plant a seed, like this could be good, but to be able to follow up a conversation with, well, didn't you say that we should go to Florida for vacation this year? Things like that. And so again, I'm rambling, but
No,
there
not at all.
was that good intent, but the subliminal messages. And then sometimes we still pass those on without thinking until we gain that awareness.
Yeah.
So, and that carries through to our relationships too. So I am going back and making up for some of those with my kids. Thankfully, I think they listen. And thankfully, like the son who just rang in, has two children of his own now. And I am just in awe. I love his wife. And I love her family. We're all very blessed that they've come into our family. Our community's gotten bigger. We're all supportive of each other. But I love watching some of the values and how they raise their kids. I just love how they honor the normal developmental stages of childhood. So my grandchildren are pushing 1.5 and 3.5. So we've been through, you know, those big milestones that on one hand can be fun, but on another hand can be labeled as like the terrible twos or,
Mhm.
and I watch them and I see how they're breaking the patterns. And that's just really, really exciting.
Yeah. Um, Something I like about a lot of other cultures is that the dynamic in the family is that the grandparents, for the most part, raise the children, and the parents go out and work and take care of things because they're still able-bodied, and the grandparents have more wisdom and patience to be able to direct the children. And
Hmm.
um there's been studies where they take like preschoolers or daycare kids and they put them with people in nursing homes, and the people in the nursing homes do much better. So it's a more synergetic uh, connection than the parents who have been thrust into parenthood with possibly like not knowing what to do or how to do it, and they're still figuring out life themselves. And because we're technically adults at 18 or 19,
Yeah,
but I
we're
think that we don't actually fully develop until about 30. And by then, most of us, if we're going to have children, have already done so. And many of us don't even realize all of the things that we need to work through until we have children. And our society and culture over here in the US really neglects new parents. And we don't really have the village that it's meant, it takes a village to raise a child. It
fine.
really and truly does. Our parents are doing our best. Every generational, all the parents through all the generations have done their best. But back when there were legitimate villages, and you and your family may have had a house to yourself,
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah.
Most likely not. Most likely you lived with aunts and uncles or grandparents or cousins. And if they didn't live in the same house as you, they definitely lived next door in the
Hmm.
surrounding 5 to 10 houses. So it was easier to raise children. They need that many people. Just one of us, not even a child, one person, one adult person needs 20 people just
Hmm.
to accommodate all of the things of life that are needed. It's not that we necessarily need those people to do anything other than be around, you know, listen to us, throw a word of support here or there, give us some
Hmm.
advice, just be around. But children used to be a lot easier because I mean, if you take away the fact that one mother may have 15 children, and because birth control didn't exist,
Yeah.
and uh, healthcare was super low end if there was any at all. So, yes, there was other perils and struggles of life, but the actual raising of children that we understand it to be today was way simpler because you just sent that kid off with all the other 20 kids. And then they hang out with each other so they're not bugging you and talking nonstop to you. They'll talk to you for a little bit and then they'll go talk to Uncle John for a little bit and then they'll go talk to Aunt Susan for a while and then they're following around Cousin Bob, and so you had the dispersion of, because one person is a lot to handle. And
I agree.
so many of us have been, so, again, pandemic of loneliness. And so many of us have been told over and over again that we're just too much and we can't figure out why. And the
Hmm.
problem is that if you encounter someone that's too much and they, we all know that one person that just talks and talks and talks and talks, couldn't be me. But chances are they don't have a support system in their life. We have to have several individuals to disperse ourselves between
Hmm.
to have all of our emotional, mental, community connection needs met. So I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but
No, I totally agree with that. And I can identify in a couple of ways. One, I think it's really common Well, in my world, it's common to move away from home and not come back. So
Yes.
when my kids were little, my parents uh, lived 500 miles away, and my now ex-husband's parents lived at least 700 miles away. And there was a period of time where I was definitely in survival mode because my
Sure.
husband traveled 3 or 4 nights a week. But the saving grace was that I built a community of the other women who were in a similar situation with me. My neighborhood that I lived in just happened to appeal to a lot of, I don't want to say transient, but people who come and go, people who work at the larger plants and things like that. And so we built our own little community network. I mean, and I would not have survived those
Hmm.
days without the women, you know?
Hmm.
Um, and on the other hand, I look at my son and daughter-in-law, her parents retired, I want to say during COVID or right after COVID, or when the baby was born. But they have been so helpful to Dennis and Michelle. And so Michelle's been able to go back to work and things like that. I mean, but if you don't have that support, it is very lonely. And I don't know a whole lot about this, but I've seen this all over the internet. And because I've had a daughter-in-law, I have two babies who's very um, proactive in learning about mental health and things like that. I mean, I've learned so much about postpartum depression, anxiety, all of those things associated with early parenthood, early motherhood. It's just interesting on the resources that are now becoming available for
Hmm.
moms. But the stressors with that, I mean, I definitely experienced postpartum depression after two of my kids. The first time I didn't tell anyone about it for the most part, because I was embarrassed, ashamed, those childhood roles. The second time, so it was my second child, my fourth child, that with my fourth child, which of course you got four kids now, husband travels. I have some friends, some good support, but four kids is a lot.
Yeah.
Love my kids. Glad I have four kids.
Two is a lot.
Um, but towards the end of my pregnancy, I really suffered with insomnia. And I don't know if the depression set in before, but man, postpartum depression hit me in the hospital and I had to go on medication. Thank God for medication. And it was so bad, I had to tell people about it.
Hmm.
And by that time, too, I'm really blessed. Here's a side story. The same doctor, because I live in kind of a smaller community or a subset of a smaller community, the same doctor delivered all four of my babies at the same little county hospital. And she knew me well by the time the fourth baby came along. So when I complained about sleepless nights, she was like, okay, we got to do something about this. She was more proactive, and I was better able to say, I need help, you know. But I think, okay, so I'm getting off on a tangent. Asking for help is a really hard thing for people to do.
Yeah.
Now I'm a totally different generation, older generation from you. I feel like things are changing and that there's a more positive attitude towards mental health medication therapy than there was when I was first out of school. I feel like back then there was a huge stigma about addiction and depression and
Oh, yeah.
especially about um, am I blanking on bipolar disorder on the correct name? But you know, there was all these uh, stereotypes
Hmm.
and reasons to keep it quiet.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah. Just five
but
years ago.
that's what I was going to ask. Do you think that's true with your generation? Do you think it's more acceptable?
There has been a very right angle turn in the past 5 years with it. But when I first started talking about all this, which is one of the reasons why I started talking about it, was
Mhm.
because it was so stigmatized that
Mhm.
everybody in my life was, because I had some serious mental health crises for sure. And it, you know, it was all trauma based and
Mhm.
various things that aren't my fault, but everybody acts like it's your fault. So, you know, they're like, why can't you just suck it up like the rest of us and keep on trucking? Like, well, you're bothering everybody with your constant uh emotional overwhelm and breakdowns. Like, can't you just get your life together? Can't you just get it together? And it's like, well, no, I can't because you know, you got all this trauma stacked up back here, and then y'all are ignoring the fact that any of it happened, and no one's pointing me in any sort of direction that's actually helpful. You're just telling me to
Mhm.
suck it up. So, I, when I finally had, like, I don't know if there were breakdowns or not, but I ended up on Prozac for a couple of years for sure.
Mhm.
And people in my life were just like, they make you feel bad about it. They make you feel bad about like they want you to stop bothering them with your emotions, but they don't want to listen to you try to talk about it or figure out what's going on. They don't want to really be there or help you with it. They want to just go about their own lives, and can't you just let them? And
Right.
but they also don't want you to go to the doctor and get medication to help.
Uh-huh.
It's like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place. It's like,
And then don't tell the neighbors or anyone,
sure.
extended family about this.
Right, because they're so embarrassed. They're so
Mhm.
embarrassed for you, about you,
Mhm.
that you, you know, it's just so yeah, for sure. 5 years ago, even the stigma was still there. But, you know, I have so many people in my family that have anxiety and they have no idea that they have anxiety.
True. Very
Yeah.
true.
But
I
luckily,
was probably one of those when I was self-medicating my anxiety with alcohol,
uh-huh,
you which is counterproductive. So,
right.
but yeah, no, I think there's a lot of people walking around who could be getting more help if they would, one, talk about it and two, ask for it. And it doesn't necessarily mean medication,
Sure.
um, because I also got involved in a lot of other self-care activities. So,
That's what's most helpful for sure. But it's
yeah.
so hard to do if you don't have the self-worth to go through with it,
Hmm.
and you're crunched by, you know, the standards of you still have to go to work and do that and make money so that you can eat, and then you have to figure out how to cook the food, and you 3 times a day is obnoxious that we have to eat. um and then, you know, you have to go buy the food, so you have all these errands that you have to run, and oh look, I got to clean the bathroom again, and, you know, 4 kids running around. It's just it's too much for any, just the basic bare bones, what we need to do on a daily basis, a weekly basis to just exist is too much for any one person to
Hmm.
handle. But we're all expected to do it without help.
Oh my God, that I have a whole big, what's the word? I could talk forever about that controversy where you're supposed to be able to do it all, be the perfect mom, provider,
Mhm.
cook, housekeeper, cleaner, nurse,
Mm-hmm.
educator, and also carry on a career.
Mm-hmm.
And how
Like you
tough.
don't have kids.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's
We
I
both.
struggled. That fueled my drinking too. I
Sure.
really
Sure.
struggled with that because my mom pushed me to have this education. I got a higher education. And then when I chose to be a stay-at-home mom for a while, she was like, I don't get that at all. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, which is mm, staying home, being able to do that was a self-care activity. And it was
Mm-hmm.
her not intentionally putting it down, but putting it down, saying, no, you should be able
Mm-hmm.
to do this all. So, yeah, that whole thing. Do you feel like there's still pressure to do that too now? Or do you feel like, because I feel like, especially after COVID, I think COVID opened the door to more creative income earning activities and
Mhm.
working from home. But do you feel pressure to do it all?
Um, so that's another thing that's had a shift, a very sharp shift recently.
Mhm.
You know, the right now is an amazing time to witness just all of the shifts in society because we
Mhm.
are entering a new paradigm to where we're figuring things out and making things more malleable, and
Mhm.
there's more space around all of the different options. So, whereas we were pressured to do all of the things, both of the things perfectly, now people are breaking those down and they're becoming a little bit more lenient. So, you have like the old paradigm mentality, which is mostly the older generations who are, all of these things worked for them. So they can't see why, like, it doesn't make sense to them why anything would be different or why we would shift unless they have a very close, personal, loving, compassionate relationship with someone specific who has went through these things and has shown them, and
Mhm.
they've, oh, okay, well, now I understand that even though I could do that in my world, 30 years ago, doesn't mean that that's necessarily as easy for people to do now, so unless they have that kind of shift. But yeah, I think it's definitely becoming a freer place to be.
Mhm.
So we're seeing that it's a beautiful thing that, and social media with all of its flaws also brings us wonderful things as well. So like I love uh I would love to have a homestead. I have tried very hard, tried very hard to garden and learn about all the herbs and make my own salves and chapstick. And I have a lot of ideals. I've always had a lot of ideals about what society and culture in the world should be like. And I've tried my best to
Mhm.
live to those, and it just became too much. So now, even though I do still dabble in the garden, I used to put a lot of pressure on myself to do that as well. So I was trying to be the perfect mom, have a career, bring in money. Um, when me and my husband first got together, I made more money than he did, so I paid most of the bills. And then when we had started having children, that shifted, and I was able to stay at home with them, but that was a really hard transition for me. So I was still
Mhm.
trying to like do the things and be a part of the relationship monetarily somehow, but then also do all of the gardening and the cooking and the making our own self-care products. And so now I love the fact that I can relax and just allow. So I watch homesteaders on Instagram and I'm just like, I love living vicariously through you
Uh-huh.
so that I don't have to.
Okay.
And you know, you connect with people in your community who do those things. So that, because my whole thing is, I grew up in a very, it was stable, but also unstable. Like I had
Mhm.
to be very self-sufficient from a very early age. It was very clear that I had to take care of me.
Mhm.
So I've never really trusted anyone else to take care of me. And that extends so deeply as to going to like the government and whatnot. So I've always been very, plus I was a Girl Scout and grew up in the woods anyway.
Uh-huh.
And so in the South at that.
Right.
So, um, there's always this underlying don't rely on the government to make sure the grocery stores are full. So especially when I started having kids, I was like, oh no, what if there was like a social collapse? How would I feed these children? And that's kind of what started my like gardening and
Mhm.
self-sufficient stuff. And I'm able to relax a little bit now because I love that a lot of people are shifting towards essentially what my ideals had always been, bringing things back to the community, uh, local farm to table type things, farmers markets are like, I think 10 years ago they were trendy, it was,
Ew.
but it was like something that rich people went to, honestly. It was
Uh-huh.
the aesthetically pleasing thing to do, whereas they've stuck around long enough to where people are shifting their mindset of, no, this is better because there's less chemicals in the food and there's less toxins and there's less carbon emissions because it's not traveling all over the place. The food tastes better because it's
Mhm.
in season rather than picked before it's ripe and then shipped a
Yeah.
100 miles. There's like all these things. So, long story short, a lot of the pressure that is put on us now, 5, 10 years ago, yes, it was pressure from everybody else, for sure. At least that was my experience.
Mhm.
Now, I think most of the pressure comes from us putting it on ourselves. So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So if we can just learn how to kind of prioritize our, I say that there's nothing more important than our energy. There's nothing more important, and that translates into there's nothing more important than maintaining a stress-free life because
Mhm.
stress is one of the number one causes of all health concerns. So used to when I was younger, I've always been very aware of certain things, not socially, not people, but myself and like the world. And so I realized pretty early on that as long as I could avoid a car accident, I'd probably be pretty safe, like to make it into older age.
Mhm.
And now I'm learning, well, not now, but like the past 15 years, I've been on health and well-being and how
Uh,
ever since the seizure stress levels got problematic, um, turns out stress and lifestyle is the biggest factor of health. So most of our health concerns are caused by and can be remedied by focusing on our stress.
mhm.
So that being said, there's nothing more important than our energy, which means there's nothing more important than navigating and managing our stress levels and checking in with our emotions and trying to tune those to something more helpful. Again, we can create happiness or peace or space in any moment. It just takes a little bit of shifting, a little bit of awareness. It's all awareness. Every bit
Mhm.
of it is just hyper awareness of what's going on in your head right now. Why is that helpful? If it's not, how can we refocus it towards something that is helpful? It's like a puppy, an untrained puppy or a toddler, in their terrible twos. Do you berate them? Do you yell at them? Do you spank them? Or do you go, hey, that's kind of dangerous. How about we go play on the swing? You want to go play on the swing? Let's go play on the swing. You want to go for a walk? Let's go for a walk. It's just redirecting your mind, and
Absolutely.
that's part of reparenting yourself.
Right.
We forget that we are still that same 7-year-old on the inside. Whoever you were at 7 years old is exactly who you are now on the inside. You've just
Uh,
grown, you've learned a lot more, but all of the basics are still there. You still, what made you happy then?
mhm.
Allow yourself to play a little bit. Um, but it also, as adults, we don't have a parent hanging over us 24/7 anymore to tell us, maybe we shouldn't eat 5 donuts, love. Maybe one is plenty. No, you can't have Reese's for dinner. Let's and maybe 5 pieces of pizza isn't great either. How about have you tried broccoli? Oh, you don't like
Yeah.
broccoli? Well, there's a million different ways to cook broccoli. Uh, Getting in the kitchen is something that I deplore, but my children love it because it's basically experimenting and
Right.
mixing things. It's a lab. It's a lab, and they love to get in there and make things. And as they're getting older, it takes a lot less uh, standing over them. And then I get food too. So,
True. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, that really is a lot about, understanding like the developmental stages of kids is directing them, praising the good thing. Like it's great that a 2-year-old wants to do things by themselves. We don't want to stifle that.
right.
It requires more work on our part to be patient while they take the time to figure out how to buckle themselves their car seat.
Mm-hmm.
It's frustration. Which goes back to two things. We're in that go, go, go mentality, and
Mm-hmm.
we want to fix other people as opposed to allow them to fix themselves. But yeah, kids are a great example. I love that you frame the 7-year-old, where you are. And I'm thinking, well, at 7, my life was pretty traumatic.
Yeah.
So, I agree that I'm not sure if I completely agree with the age 7, but I agree with who we are when we're a genuine, authentic kid. That's who
Mhm.
we need to reach out to be again. Because to get a little philosophical, I mean, I believe in a higher power, and I believe that we were all created in a with good intention, all created with love, caring. We are loved, but by our creator. But sometimes people or instances, COVID, I wonder what COVID's going to do with that whole age group of kids who were isolated for 2 years. Sorry, get distracted. But incidences, things that we can't control do impact and we hang on to them until we work through them and resolve them. So,
Mm-hmm.
so I am really all about like working through some of that inner child trauma. Is that your approach as well, or are you more focused on sticking in the present?
I'm a little all over the place, honestly. It depends on, you have to find what works for you.
Good point.
And in that journey, I have learned all the things that I could possibly learn thus far. I'm still
Uh-huh.
learning. I finished a book yesterday called The Body Keeps Score.
Oh, that's a great book. Yeah.
Very good book. I highly recommend everybody read that book. Uh, if you don't have trauma, you might a little bit after reading it, honestly. It was a little thick on the emotional side, but so eye-opening for so many things, and it gives a lot of great starting points on things to do to start healing. And but for some of us, it helps to name it
Hmm.
and to have witnesses. We need to talk about it a lot of the time. But for other people, they do just need to forget it and move forward. And, it's debatable on whether or not, because some people, my daughter and my husband are like, me and my son need to talk about it in order to
Hmm.
move through it. My daughter and my husband, they stick to just leave me alone for a minute and I'll be fine and get over it in a second. And it's like, maybe, but are you sure you're actually getting over it, or is it resurfacing later in other ways? So you really have to be self-aware and
Hmm.
and be able to discern what's actually helpful and what's to move forward and through it.
Hmm.
Because sure, some things they can just, just let me get over it for a second and I'll
Hmm.
move through it. But the bigger things usually they stick around and you want to, but so talking about it and naming it is helpful. Uh Physical movement, because again, uh these things get stuck in your body, and as a yoga, meditation, energy worker, I talk about this all the time, and it comes off as really like woo-woo, and people don't get it.
Uh-huh.
But The Body Keeps Score is a wonderful book because it gives you all of the science behind,
Right.
yes, these things actually get these trauma responses get stuck in the body. You know, the body
Mhm.
keeps score means the body remembers even if you don't.
Right.
So, movement is a great way to heal and get through this. And then you're also working on, exercise. We all know exercise is great for us.
Right.
And
Right.
I hate exercise. I cannot go to the gym. I've done it. I've done it. I did it and did it and did it. And it was just the most painfully boring thing to walk on a treadmill for an hour or lift weights or, whatever, whatever. So I do yoga. I have to trick myself into exercise. I have to make it fun. So I do yoga. I teach yoga at least 2 times a week, usually more. And then I do jujitsu at least 2 times a week. And then I play pickleball 4 to 6 times a week. Uh, so movement helps work those emotions out. The way I explain it to my students is that emotions are chemical releases in our body.
Hmm.
And then if we allow these to be processed through, we do the work to, because the body is just full of channels, energy
Hmm.
channels, and I say energy channels, that means the circulatory system, the lymphatic system, the respiratory system, the digestive system, all of the things. And when our body tenses up, it constricts these systems and things aren't able to cycle out. It's like creating a dam. You're taking those vessels and you're squeezing them shut. So now what are they doing? They're getting absorbed into the cells, into the muscles, into the ligaments, and then they just sit there until that area releases, relaxes, flushes it all out. So physical movement is a great way to release some of those things. And that's why a lot of people have reported being in a yoga class and you get in these really deep hip openers and suddenly they're crying and they have no idea why.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's fascinating. I totally agree with you too. I want to add that I think art and music are also great ways to
Absolutely.
work through
Journaling.
emotions. Yeah, yeah. So, and I do. I was a swimmer and a runner and into the gym as a young person, but I've transferred that into walking the dogs, working in my yard aggressively, and hiking, and doing physical activity or movement that,
Hmm.
you know, it just comes more, well, the swimming and running actually is natural. Swimming to me is more fun and not a workout is the problem. You have to work. I'm, that sounds terrible, but I'm such an efficient swimmer. I have to work really hard to make it a workout.
I understand that.
And
That's how I am with it.
running, yeah, running, I'm getting old and I want to protect my knees. So
Mhm.
have
Yeah.
to, I don't know, walking with a 25-pound pack on my back is a good idea, but it certainly seems better than pounding on pavement because at least I'm
Mhm.
on soft ground. But the point being is you got to find what works for you. And I
Mhm.
totally agree. Movement is one of my key self-care activities, but other forms of creativity too, I think are
Yeah.
important ways, especially for kids who are struggling to express their emotions and um, define them, put words to them. Sometimes you can ask them, "Oh, what does that emotion feel like?" Well, it feels green. Well, tell me about green. Why green? So things like that.
Yeah.
We're getting on different tangents here,
Oh,
but
it's okay. It's all helpful.
yeah, yeah.
Uh, Doing things in nature is you kind of, it's like doubling down on the healing power for
I
sure.
think so too. I mean, I believe the whole nature bathing
Yes.
thing. Yeah. Yeah.
We're
No.
hoping to go kayaking in a couple of days. We love to kayak. We've
Mhm.
been kayaking for 10 years now. My son has had his own kayak for probably 2 or 3 years, and we were going to introduce my daughter to her own kayak this year, but it has been so rainy that we haven't been able to go. It's rained for a month and a half straight where we
Mhm.
are. Where are you at?
I am in Daphne, Alabama, which is near the coast of Alabama. Where are you?
I'm just a hop skip over from Huntsville.
Okay. Okay.
So,
Yeah. Yeah. I recognize the accent.
yeah,
Uh, but I wondered, and some of the cute sayings, the sayings that you say that I think maybe some of our northerner listeners may not, they might go, hmm, but
that's so funny that I don't even notice
I
anymore.
don't either. And I'm often told I have a funny accent because my parents were from Minnesota and I grew up in Texas. And
Okay.
yeah, so people are usually like people down here don't think I have a Southern accent. But, when I go visit friends or family in New York, Pennsylvania, they're like, oh, so.
Yeah,
And my kids are even more confused because their dad was from New York. So,
that's great.
anyhow, accents are fun.
They
Again,
are.
that's another example of like generational issues that are passed down that we have no control over,
Hmm.
and you kind of got to adapt to. So,
Yeah. Well, I have a thick accent even for where I'm at.
mhm.
Like because I literally grew up in the woods. Like literally. I was
Uh-huh.
in the woods every single day. My grandparents raised me. And and when I say grandparents, I mean I had three different sets and they just kind of passed me around. And
Mhm.
all three had farms of different calibers. So
Uh-huh.
there was one set had horses. So we were just riding horses all the time. And then another set had like 200 acres of various things. So like there was cows, they had ostriches, yeah, random things. And just lots of woods. And then another set was farm hands. So they had like goats themselves, goats and chicken and quail, but we would travel around to other farms doing
Mhm.
whatever needed done for them, like vaccinating cattle or
Mhm.
fencing or just whatever. So in elementary school, other kids were making fun of me because of how thick my accent was. And we'd sit at the lunch table and they'd be like, say this, say this. So, and then, the connotation of Southern accents was that you were dumb. So, and I didn't like that. So I
Mhm.
started being really particular about how I spoke and used
Uh-huh.
grammar. And started doing this in elementary school. And by my teenagers, by high school, I had almost completely eliminated my accent. But
Uh-huh.
it had to be purposeful. So when I was
Yeah.
around people, I was very specific about how I spoke.
Uh-huh.
I really didn't talk much anyway, so it wasn't that hard. But about mid-20s, I was like, I'm so tired of this. I'm just gonna talk however I talk, however I come out, and it's fine. And
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
anyway.
My kids accuse me of if I'm speaking to someone with a like my mother-in-law when she was alive is from Ireland, immigrant from Ireland, and they would be like, when you talk to grandma, you're mimicking her accent. I'd be like, it's not conscious.
Yeah.
It's the people pleasing, the part of me that wants to be accepted and like that I will adapt.
Well, it's normal.
Yeah.
It's a
Okay, I'm
normal
glad you
thing.
said that.
Yeah, people do that. It's a way that it's not conscious. It's something that our brain just does to
Uh-huh.
connect with whoever we're talking to. We we don't only mirror their accents and start picking that
Hmm.
up, but we also mirror their body language. So if you start paying attention when you're talking to someone, if you're enjoying the conversation and you like this person and you like hanging out with them, if they
Uh-huh.
cross their arms, you may subconsciously cross your arms too. If they cross their feet, you may subconsciously cross your feet. We don't even realize we're doing it.
Yeah, I totally see that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm gonna lay after this publishes, I'm gonna take a clip of this and send it to each of them. Like, see, I'm not the only one who thinks this is normal.
Just tell them they're projecting. That's my favorite
True.
comeback with everything. You're
That's true.
projecting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do be self-aware of yourself, but also you can always pull that out. You're just projecting. Because
Yeah.
again, we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are.
Yeah. I like that. Okay, so listeners, here's tip number however many tips we've given out today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We have been going for an hour and a half though, if you want to wrap this up.
I think that we should. One of my, well, I put one dog into the bedroom because the neighbors have yard people cutting down a tree or something, and she was going crazy. And I put the other dog, who's a golden retriever, outside, and she keeps coming at the window going, "It's hot out here."
Oh yeah, it is hot, bless them. What's the other
Yeah.
dog? Do you have a golden retriever?
Oh, she's a mutt. So one's a golden retriever. She's a real pretty red gold. Both of them are rescues. And the other, she was a retired dog that was a breeder. I mean, she was a breeding dog in a nice home, but we rescued her because the she was retired. And
Mhm.
then the other one we picked up from the shelter for my son. They're both my son's dogs. And she is a 40-pound mix, very sweet dog. So, but very protective and barks so aggressively. She's the best watchdog ever. For when I'm home alone, like, I mean, I have yeah. When I don't want to answer the door to someone, she's going crazy at the door, and I'll walk up and go, sorry, if they're like selling power washing or something. But yeah, I love our dogs. They're a part of the family.
Oh yeah. We have Great Pyrenees mixes. So
Oh,
very
nice.
big dogs. One's a Pyrenees lab and he's
Uh-huh.
solid white. And then the other one's a Pyrenees, some sort of shepherd mix. And
Mhm.
that one was a stray that just showed up as a puppy at my mother-in-law's house one day.
Uh-huh.
I brought him home.
Oh,
And then the other one, uh, our neighbors had puppies and they just found their way into our backyard one day and we kept one. So both of our dogs found us.
yeah, I like that. I had a cat like that once. She stayed a long time. Yeah. I kind of wish another cat would find me. I'd like an outdoor cat, except for the golden retriever might eat it. I don't know.
We have indoor outdoor cats as well. They've been around longer than my kids have. And yeah, it'll be a sad day when we lose them. They're both like 13, 14 years old at this
Oh
point.
my gosh, I don't handle losing a dog at all. We could do a whole episode on talking about dogs and for mental health or pets and mental health
Well, let's
and
do it.
grief. Okay, let's do that.
We can do another
Um,
episode.
yeah, yeah, because I really feel strongly about pets,
Hmm.
um, how they're good for us, service animals, emotional, and how we get so attached to them.
Hmm.
So I don't handle losing a dog. Grief is one of my core issues that I've never really gotten over. But I don't handle losing a dog well. So, and both of these dogs are getting old, and we don't really know how old they are. So I'm like, you've got to live forever. So,
Yeah. Well, I think that we could absolutely fill another hour and a half episode if we wanted to. So let's plan on it. Let's plan
okay,
on doing that.
we'll do.
All right. Well, we'll wrap this one up. Tell people how to find you. You have a book. Tell them about that.
All right. So my book is called Rebuilding Relationships in Recovery. It's based on both my personal and professional experience because I'm a recovering alcoholic. At this point, I have more than 12 years of sobriety. I'm also a licensed master's level social worker, worked in and out of the field while being a mother and volunteering for more than 20 years. So it's based on both my personal and my professional experience. It is a very easy, readable book about how to repair relationships after addiction or trauma. Um, the primary audience is the addict or alcoholic, but it's good for everyone in the family because it does have a chapter on the science of addiction because I just find that fascinating and an important thing to know about relapse and relapse prevention because it takes a while for you to reprogram your brain
Hmm.
from craving and things triggering that addiction. But it's a great book. It's a great resource and came out in March. It's selling well, and I appreciate you letting me plug it.
Yeah.
My, I have a website. It is janicejonsondowd.com. My Instagram is parenting underscore the word IN underscore recovery. And my daughter and I just published the first episode of a podcast where we talk about repairing relationships and recovery. Very honest, brutal. It's like this one, and that it's not scripted at all. We go, what do we talk about today? But we've only published one, well, two episodes, so it's very new. But I would love for people to listen in. It's called Recovering Relationships, and it's Apple, Spotify, everywhere except YouTube. So,
Cool. And by the time this comes out, I'm sure you'll have more episodes up there because my podcast is on hiatus for the
I
summer.
saw that, right?
Yeah, so but we're still recording. I'm just not
Uh-huh.
putting the pressure on myself to do all the back end things with the publishing
That's
because
hard.
space. We need space.
Right,
So,
right.
September 22nd is when we plan to come back, and you
Perfect.
are poised to be the first episode in that. So,
Okay, that's wonderful. I really appreciate that. It's
yeah.
been a pleasure talking to you. I've learned a lot, and I look forward to talking more and learning more. And it
So do
makes me want to go start yoga again. I did yoga early in my recovery too, hot yoga.
Oh, that's a lot of work.
Yeah, but it was really good. I
It
really
is.
needed it at the time. It was very purging. So,
Good. That's good. Yeah, I feel like we've barely scratched the surface. We didn't really even talk about addiction, and we definitely could. So we'll plan on that next episode and pets and recovery and all of that. I'm already excited about it.
all right, Savannah, it's been great talking to you.
You too.